Socialism for thee and not for me. And of course, the dumbest bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials. And the Millennials joining me today are Andrew the Fulginiti, Ryan the Squirrel Brady, and of course, our producer, Adam Katura. How's everybody doing today?
Doing great.
All right. So you won't believe the dumbest bill in America, which we are going to talk about later today, but it's about gender neutrality, and we're going to get there. But first up is $15 minimum wage rhetoric with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders doesn't want to pay his workers a $15 minimum wage. However, he's telling everybody else, including Walmart and, of course, Amazon and McDonald's, in particular McDonald's, you have to pay a living wage, and it's $15. Here's a clip with Bernie Sanders.
I think most people are aware that for the last 40 years, the middle class of our country has been in decline. That in Vermont and all over this country, we have people working 2 or 3 jobs. We have people working 50, 60, 70 hours a week just to put food on the table, just to make sure that their families can live with a modicum of dignity. And the reason for all of that is that wages in the United States of America are just too low. And the time is long overdue for us to raise the minimum wage, which is now at the federal level $7.25 an hour, which I think under any definition is a starvation wage.
Yeah, which he's paying less than $15 per hour to his own employees on his campaign, and he's telling everybody else you got to pay a $15 minimum wage. And then he's caught not paying them $15 an hour. The media covers this. It's all over the national media. And then what does he have to do? He can't afford to pay them $15 per hour. So then he reduces the hours that they work on a weekly basis, which is what, of course, every other employer, at least for the most part, especially in the service industry, would do. I really want to hear the millennial view on this $15 minimum wage for certain jobs.
So we got what, $15 an hour, and if you work 40-hour work weeks for the whole year, that's about a $42,000 salary. That's a pretty decent salary. But from my understanding is if you're working someone's political campaign, you know you're working long nights. You're probably not going to get paid a lot. You're probably not going to get benefits. But that's all in the hopes of making connections, getting experience in the political world to meet the right people. And on top of that, hopefully maybe your candidate wins, and you get to work in a government position that pays a lot with a lot of great government benefits. But, you know, it's a hypocrisy coming from Senator Sanders, and you're like, dude, really?
Fuji, isn't that kind of like working at a restaurant where you're hoping to work as many hours as you can because you want to get as many tables as you can because you're making tips, but you're not making $15 an hour. You're making a lot less than that,
and
right?
Treating your guests great.
Absolutely. I mean, this is fascinating to me. I think it's hilarious that Bernie's getting a little dose of what everyone else, all these businesses have been crying for years in these different states that have already passed higher minimum wages, that they're saying, look, like, we can't afford it, to pay these wages. Somebody who's working maybe 6, 7, 8 hours now, if we have to increase their wage, then we're going to cut back hours. Businesses have been saying this all over the country, and now Bernie's seeing it and saying, yeah, I'm going to pay $15 an hour, but your 8-hour day is not going to be cut to a 3-hour day to be able to accommodate that. And people are like, wait, what?
So is it a living wage now that you have less hours at $15 an hour?
That's neutered. The whole initiative is neutered. And also, I think his campaign staff is unionized too. He made it a union. So it's coming back to bite him in the butt. And you're like, dude.
Well, how about this idea that we have a national minimum wage? The national minimum wage is supposed to be an extremely low minimum wage. And then states, under our system of federalism, can decide on a state-by-state basis what is appropriate for that state. Because clearly, the minimum wage in the state of New York is probably going to be higher in New York than it would be, I don't know, maybe in the South, like in Alabama, or perhaps in Utah, or, these kinds of states. And it's understandable because that's the way it's supposed to be. But he wants a unified, uniform minimum wage, $15 an hour, which he's not going to pay.
And if you think the $15 minimum wage is going to stop, we already have on record in audio, you can look it up. It just broke, I think, a day or two ago. Representative Tlaib saying, we want $18 and $20 minimum wage an hour. And it's going to keep on going and going. It's never going to be enough. And you're going to be like, okay, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, but then that begs the question: if this is the result of increasing the wage, is the next step? Are they going to start mandating hours, minimum hours? Right?
Yes.
They're going to start telling businesses not only do you have to pay out this wage, you have to give them a full 40-hour work week. You have to.
Yes.
God.
And you, Squirrel, you actually brought up a great point, which is on a campaign, by definition, your workers need to work as long and as hard as is necessary so that you can get the W. You want to win, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever it takes. And so this one size fits all doesn't even fit his own campaign.
No, the campaign, you're volunteering. If you get a benefit or get a salary, some benefits from working the campaign, that's awesome. But a lot of people are volunteers hoping for the benefit of getting a nice government job or government appointed position where then you can launch your career in being in the government service or getting connected with the right private companies and people that have the ability to furnish your goals and dreams.
Yeah, they're eliminating these types of jobs that were meant to be entry-level jobs. You build these really critical skills like in the service industry where you build these people skills that are going to
customer service.
Yeah, they're transferable to any career you ever want to go into. And so, if we start mandating wages, people cut back hours. We start mandating hours, they're just going to cut jobs.
Exactly. And people, which is what the federal government's been saying. Actually, in the federal government, you have the expert civil servants who are saying that actually millions of jobs will be lost if you put a uniform minimum wage across the country, which makes perfect sense to me.
Remember when Obamacare got pushed out? A lot of businesses say if you have more than 20 employees, you have to give them health care benefits. A lot of companies probably just went, going down to 19. Sorry, the youngest person that just joined the workforce. Sorry, we got to let you go. And if you're a good boss or good owner, you would say, here's a good friend of mine that has a business. They're at 18. You can be their 19th employee. Right. Exactly. I gave you a reference.
It is almost as if bureaucrats that have done nothing but lived off the government dollar for their jobs don't know how to run businesses. It's a crazy concept.
No
Imagine
way.
that. Yes.
That's almost what it sounds like to me.
That's Adam Couture, our producer, by the way, just so for everybody out there listening. Next up, New York State Senator Julia Salazar. She's a New York State Senator and a Democratic Socialist, dipped into her trust fund in the amount of $18,000. What? She has a trust fund and she's a Democratic Socialist? Woo. Well, here's a clip of New York State Senator Julia Salazar speaking to the New York Democratic Socialists, New York State Democratic Socialists.
That's a name.
When she was running for state senator. Of course, she's now state senator. She has won. Here's a clip.
I began bagging groceries at a local grocery store when I was 14 years old and worked my way through high school in the service industry as a line cook and a waitress. I moved to New York for school and had to support myself through as a domestic worker and a caregiver. I led my neighbors in a battle against our abusive landlord and won a victory, yet still had to move out due to bad housing policies that hurt tenants. I know how the deck is stacked against all of us who aren't in the owning class.
So New York State Senator Julia Salazar, that's her talking to the Democratic Socialists in New York State when she was running. She's now a state senator. And she's talking about how hard her life is. But then once she got elected, you have to do these disclosures once you get elected about where you're getting your money from and what kind of real estate you own and who do you have loans with, because the state wants to make sure there are no conflicts of interest when you vote on issues. Well, she put basically that her net worth as a result of a trust fund was over $10 million. Then she rolled it back and said, well, it was really $400,000. I mean,
I filed incorrectly.
What's disgusting to me about this clip is that she's this whole speech, she's making it sound like it's a sob story. It's like, wow, you had a job. You had several jobs in your life. You got an education. It's like, wow, you were living the American dream. And she's making it sound like it was a sob story. Like she wasn't living on the streets or anything. She's like, I worked my way up, I got an education, and now I'm a state senator. It's like, what's sad about that? That sounds like the American dream to me. Like, I don't understand.
So, Squirrel, come on, I want to hear it. Tell me the millennial view of trust fund kids who falsely say that they've had a rough life.
What are they smoking? Because I would.
First of all, you're a trust fund kid?
No.
Okay, that's what I
was
thought.
a trust fund kid, man, I would be doing something else. No, just kidding.
I've seen your ride. It doesn't look like a trust fund kid.
I didn't get a car until junior year of college. I waited.
Well, can we?
I worked as a kitchen cook and cleaner too, and was a paintball ref. I got shot at with paintballs for some cash.
I mean, that's most people's stories is starting from the bottom and working up, right? I mean, this sounds like makes her really relatable. I don't know what she's complaining about, but
exactly.
But can we really hold her accountable for this minor accounting error? I mean, if you're a socialist, do you really practice math? Everyone's equal, right? I mean, you don't understand the difference between decimal points and commas because everyone gets the same.
Or doing research
really
on how to
matter.
do campaign finance laws and make sure you file the right form
But doesn't
correctly.
that raise the critical question that if you are a trust fund Democratic Socialist,
You're a
shouldn't you
hypocrite.
give that trust fund to the state? Because after all, I mean, you're a
You
socialist.
didn't work for that trust
You're
fund.
not allowed to have a trust fund because that is anathema to socialism.
Well,
Yeah, that's where the estate tax comes in.
It's like Bill de Blasio says, the money's just in the wrong hands, but they're the right hands, the Democratic Socialists. So trust us with the money.
We know
we'll dole
best,
it out.
dear.
And Adam Couture weighs in again, the producer. We love it. So next up, on the campaign trail for Elizabeth Warren, a woman who is a constituent of Elizabeth Warren's, maybe if she's elected. Basically, and she's white. The woman has twin African-American boys. I just want to say that again. The woman has twin African-American boys, and she is white. And she asks Elizabeth Warren about Elizabeth Warren's honesty over Warren's bogus Indian heritage claims. Here is the clip.
Because even though I can give my children everything in the world, my children at age 3.5 have already faced racism. That's why we have affirmative action. So I struggle with your decisions earlier in your career to self-identify on state documents as Native American. I feel that disrespected the reason why we have those affirmative action categories. So how do you overcome the bridge with voters like me who like you, who like your plans, who like what you have to say, but I have concerns about your honesty?
So, I grew up out in Oklahoma, and like most people, my brothers and I learned about who we are from our mom and our dad.
Right.
My family is very important to me, and based on that, sometimes decades ago, I identified that way. But nothing about the way I identified ever had anything to do with my academic career. The Boston Globe did an extensive piece on that about a year ago.
Okay.
Even so, I shouldn't have done it. I am not a person of color.
My bad.
I am not a citizen of a tribe. And I've apologized for any confusion and over tribal sovereignty, tribal citizenship, and any harm caused by that.
So this issue is going to dog Elizabeth Warren throughout the rest of the campaign because this is a Democratic woman who's asking Elizabeth Warren about this particular issue, and it bothers her because she says, well, I love your plans, I love all of your proposals, but I don't think you're honest. And what was her answer? Do you guys, is the answer believable?
That answer, she was practicing the 5 Ds of dodgeball. Dodge, dip, duck, dive, and dodge. That is political dodging at its finest. Johnny Depp is more Native American than her, and Johnny Depp got inducted to a Native tribe for
but
playing.
Squirrel, she identified as Native American.
I know. She leveraged the system.
Like Ryan said, that she dodged that question. That was almost painful to listen. I mean, listen to her words. It sounded like she almost blamed her parents. Well, her parents, that's what they told her when I was young. She blames her parents, throws them under the bus. Then she says that, well, I identified as that decades ago. She used the word decades to make it seem like, oh, that's in the past, doesn't really matter.
Everyone said they were Cherokee.
And then she says, I've already apologized for the confusion. She didn't really apologize for doing it. I apologized for the confusion.
And
that
I've
it
learned
caused.
my lesson.
I'm so sorry. Yes, exactly.
People's careers have been ended for less.
These are politicians' ways of like making it sound like you're sorry, but not really.
And by her logic, my grandfather, who was born on a farm in the middle of in Durant, Oklahoma in the 1930s, by her logic, he should be Cherokee too. Just saying.
Well,
so
exactly.
Let's go figure that out.
I think what bothers me as a baby boomer is here you have this woman who is also a baby boomer who has used the system to basically cheat people who probably were more deserving than her in order for her to move and advance in her career by saying, I am Native American because I identify as a Native American. It is disgusting. And I'm glad that Democrats are actually asking this question finally, because who brought this to the forefront? Donald Trump, because he called her Pocahontas. And before that, the media wouldn't even cover it.
Oh, and then Charlemagne, the God, the rapper dude, and he has a podcast. Basically, he did a kill shot on her the Breakfast Club podcast.
Yep.
He just kill shotted her with. So why did he do that? Oh, well, I was so really sorry about that. I was like, oh, so why did you do it? And just kept riding her on that. That was hilarious and uncomfortable. I loved it.
She didn't have a good answer, did she?
Nope.
She
didn't.
Yeah,
she dodged.
And that's going to be. I think I agree with you. That's going to be a huge issue going forward. If she still is one of the top contenders at the end, they're going to continue to hit her on this. And if she doesn't have a good answer, which she doesn't appear that she does, it's going to hurt.
Your Democratic friends are no allies during a primary.
Exactly.
They're trying to out-left you or destroy you outright.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, because her answer is, well, I did it for as long as I could to get ahead before I got caught.
She should have taken a DNA test. Oh my God. She just nailed herself to the cross on that one. You have no Native American in your DNA.
So next up, we have Chris Pratt. He's the star of Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think is a great movie, by the way.
And Andy Dwyer from Parks and Rec.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just the Guardians of the Galaxy. I think that's one of the most fantastic sci-fi movies that's out there.
The soundtracks are awesome.
Yeah, they really are. Mm-hmm. Well, he was wearing a "Don't Tread on Me" shirt, and
Love it.
Pictures were taken, and it suddenly went kind of viral, and folks are saying, well, that's racist because you're wearing a "Don't Tread on Me" shirt. Gentlemen, millennials, what does this flag mean? The "Don't Tread on Me" Gadsden flag?
So that was a Revolutionary War flag, and I believe it was Lieutenant Colonel Gadsden that made it, or he was a lieutenant general. I'm not really sure. I'm a little foggy on that. But basically, it's to the British saying, hey, if you're going to tread on me, get ready to get bit and get hurt.
Right.
And it was a great symbol, short, sweet, and to the point.
The symbol of the rattlesnake was actually used even years, decades, I think, prior to the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
It's just as a symbol of like fighting for personal freedoms.
Leave
and
me
liberties.
alone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it has nothing to do with race at all. And this is just, it seems like every week we talk about a story where like the far left uses race as a way to just like cancel out someone's opinion or cancel out it's that cancel culture we always talk about.
I think a lot of it is because all of a sudden these alt-right, like neo-Nazi groups or militia groups are now using the "Don't Tread on Me" flag for their purposes. And I'm like, okay, but most Americans subscribe to the "Don't Tread on Me" shirt as a revolutionary symbol of saying, hey, this is our heritage. We fought the British to gain our independence. And God forbid, I wonder what would have happened if Nike made a "Don't Tread on Me" shoe. Instead of the Betsy Ross. It's like, that's racist. It's like, no. That was actually meant to say, hey, Britain, if you step on us.
What would Kaepernick say? I mean,
it's racist.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Couture had something.
I can't think of a more perfect analogy here, though, than Chris Pratt wearing the "Don't Tread on Me" shirt and getting so much backlash for it, because Chris Pratt, as a member of kind of the Hollywood elite, he's a huge movie star.
Really is.
He holds different views. He's actually religious as well.
Very.
So he's been attacked in the past for holding his religious views.
In hunting.
The Hollywood media tries to say, well, his church, are they anti-gay? Are they anti-this? I can't think of a more perfect analogy there than Chris Pratt wearing a "Don't Tread on Me" shirt. Let me hold my personal beliefs, don't have government infringe upon it. And what is the Hollywood elite trying to do? Force him into submission. You have to agree with our beliefs.
Cancel culture him.
So,
there you go. Well said, Adam Couture, our producer. Basically, in the Federalist, it says the flag became a symbol of the American struggle for independence against Great Britain and has been used to express freedom and patriotism since. Who wouldn't want a shirt like that? Who wouldn't want to be patriotic? Who wouldn't want to express their freedom and their desire to be independent from government?
I want that flag up on my farm right now.
Absolutely. It's like basically government, leave me alone. All right. I've worked really hard. I'm successful. This is my house. This is my property. Just leave me alone. I mean, that's what the shirt's saying.
It symbolizes a right to be who you want to be, right? It's individual freedoms. I mean, everyone wants that. It doesn't matter what to you means individual freedoms, what you want to, be, but that's what it symbolizes.
Absolutely. So next up, Berkeley City Councilwoman. That's Berkeley, California, by the way. City Councilwoman.
Councilperson. Jumping the gun a little bit, but yeah.
You're right. How do we call her, right? A councilwoman.
How do we call they?
They.
Yeah, it's the millennial they, Kate Harrison is her name. She's a councilwoman in Berkeley City. She wants to and is succeeding in banning natural gas and all new homes that are built and new businesses that are built. She wants to ban natural gas. Here's a clip.
A new ordinance would require new buildings to be all electric, so natural gas stovetops and gas-powered heat would be phased out.
We can do this, and we're going to end up in a better place.
City Council member and sponsor of the ordinance, Kate Harrison, says in addition to reducing our dependence on fossil fuels, there's a safety risk that would be reduced as well.
Natural gas is dangerous. We all know about the San Bruno explosion. We know about the fires in Ridgecrest. We know what happens when a pipeline blows up.
So I'm curious about this. Let's say that you own stock in the natural gas company in California, and now, of course, this is just one city. It's not the entire state. But now, of course, all of this infrastructure that has been installed is stranded. That is to say, you can't recapture any of the investment that you have and your stock goes down in value. I mean, do these people have any idea what they're doing?
I honestly did not think about that. I just thought that by getting rid of natural gas, going all electric, they're thinking, oh, it's going to be safer? No, you're just increasing the emissions produced by a traditional coal-fired power plant. Go figure.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's no the solar and wind probably won't. They can't sustain the energy needs, so they're still going to use natural gas, just not at homes.
Natural gas is efficient. Europe uses natural gas.
It's cheaper too.
Well,
and
exactly.
Electricity is the most expensive way to cook food, let alone heat your water.
We're literally at the peak of the natural gas,
and
revolution in the United States.
We're shipping LNG, liquid natural gas, to Europe and hell, even Japan.
Well, here's a thought. Here is Kate Harrison banning natural gas, right? And you have all these people who are homeless in California. There's also a housing crisis in Berkeley where housing is really expensive, because that was on their docket as well, of course, when they were talking about this particular issue, is the cost of housing. Isn't it really obvious that maybe one of the reasons you have so many homeless people is because the city and the state keep making it so prohibitively expensive to live in California and in the city of Berkeley?
They made their own monster and now they're getting eaten by it.
I mean, there should be a millennial backlash against this, because how can you ever get to the point where you have home ownership, and then if you do have home ownership, actually afford to stay in the home if they keep raising prices artificially?
Well, this is why there's the statistics are out there that millennials don't want to own homes anymore because of things like this. It's way too, like you said, cost prohibitive for our generation to own homes. Most of us don't. We'll rent forever, or we'll live in our parents' basement.
Exactly.
I'm trying to buy a home, so I'm just figuring out that I may have to save for a couple of years to even get a down payment on a reasonable sized home to actually start building equity and start investing in a home, because I'd rather have money go towards something I own rather than just a couple $1,000 here a month to renting to somebody else. I'm not going to see that my way. I'm not investing in myself. So getting into the home market makes sense for me to actually build well. So I bought like a $300,000 home. Then later in life, I'll sell that home and be able to buy a $500,000 home. That's a generic high-level overview.
You trade up. Exactly.
That's how you build
trade
wealth.
up. And then you can't keep wealth if you have these really crazy bills that are put in that make it unsustainable to even live.
Well, it seems like the barrier to the entries keep getting higher and higher to be a homeowner in California and in most of these really deep blue states, which is really unfortunate.
Exactly.
It's frustrating. It's what happens when you have a government that thinks they knows what's best. They ban it, or if they don't mandate it, they ban it, right?
Or they don't fix the issue.
They find a way to be the ones that control your life by either mandating something or banning something.
Exactly. Democrats ban, Republicans innovate. That's like I've been saying this for years. Yeah. I mean, they don't like something, so they ban it. So instead, why not just create incentives to try new things?
And they won't have the hard talks and actually solve the issue. They'll navigate around and say, oh, no, everything's great. No, we're going to have it. And then before you know it, you have a homeless boom and a housing crisis.
Exactly.
Don't tread on me, man. Don't tread on me.
That's our producer, Adam Couture, weighing in. We love it.
Leave my tent on the sidewalk. I chose this life.
So next up, Victor David Hanson, who is a fellow at the Hoover Institute, which is affiliated, of course, at Stanford University in California. He wrote an incredible op-ed, and I believe it's in the Wall Street Journal, and it's entitled, "America Does Not Have to Be Perfect to Be Good." I encourage everyone out there to read this op-ed. It is really terrific because he talks about many of the things that we are discussing during this podcast, namely the complaints from the progressives and the idea that they're banning things and the things that they're trying to tell us that our culture and our society was based on these terrible things and we can never get better and therefore it must be destroyed. Gentlemen, I know you read this. Weigh in on this.
So, you know what's funny? If Democrats and the far left, socialist, progressive, and they say if our country's not good or great and they need to basically tear everything down to build it back up when what they want, is then why are there so many immigrants trying to get into this country? I don't see other people trying to get into all the other countries around the world. They all say, I want to go to America because that is the best shot at a great life for me and my family. And I think they're just so out of touch with actually nothing's perfect. If you think something's perfect, you're not living reality. You're living in a fantasy land, which I think most of these progressives do live in, and they are too far gone to actually recognize that.
Exactly.
And we're
Well
seeing
said.
this happen.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I think I saw a quote recently, his name is Dinesh D'Souza.
Dinesh D'Souza, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, where he says, he's like, think about the term American dream. He's like, can you think of any other country? Can you think of the Indian dream? No. Do you think that the Russian dream? No. It's like, there's a reason it's the American dream, right? You don't think, those are completely different terms. Everyone thinks of what they know when you say the American dream.
I think there's an
what
Afghanistan dream, don't you?
Yeah.
A large poppy field and a good trade route.
But there's a reason. Yeah.
He went there.
I didn't.
No, but I mean, seriously, the point is the American dream means something to people, and that's why, like he was saying, people immigrate to this country because the opportunities that exist here don't exist anywhere else, and we never have been perfect and never will be perfect. It's the great experiment. We strive for greatness, but it'll never be perfect. There's no utopia that will ever exist in America, but we have principles, we have values.
Yet
that we
so
hold.
many millennials want a utopia, and they really believe it's possible and attainable.
I
They had Bibles in college.
I think it's easily to be swayed when people are like, well,
Free.
if we have socialism, then, we won't have homelessness. And people are like, yeah, everyone doesn't want homelessness, right? So it's like you can be lured by,
Yes.
phrases like that. But I think when you go through it and put into
Idealism.
practice, yeah, exactly.
So look at Venezuela. Come on.
Right. Yeah.
So listen to this. Victor David Hansen, of course, he wrote this op-ed, and this is the thing that we're talking about. It's in the opinion section of the Wall Street Journal. He ends with this, and I'm going to read this because it's really moving. It says, if progressives and socialists can at last convince the American public that their country was always hopelessly flawed, they gain power to remake it based on their own interests. These elites see Americans not as unique individuals, but as race, class, and gender collectives with shared grievances from the past that must be paid out in the present and the future. We've seen something like this fight before. It was in 1861, and it didn't end well. I mean, just
Powerful. I got chills with that, not going to lie.
Absolutely. So if you're out there, please read this. It's pretty fantastic. Last thoughts on this, gents.
Hey, we're the greatest experiment. We're the shining city upon the hill. And if the progressives want to tear us down, our adversaries, Russia, China, Iran, are just going to be licking their chops, ready to take the gap that we're going to leave in the geopolitical realm. I see this on a larger scale rather than just domestic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, don't be blinded by this whole and he says in the article, this has been the summer of anti-patriotism and anti-America. Don't fall into that trap. We've never been perfect. The slogan for Trump is not make America perfect again. It's make America great, right, and good. We are a great country. We have values. We have principles, and we need to continue to hold those. And we do. I mean, yeah. Don't fall into the trap.
Other countries are trying to take us down, and by doing this, you're helping them, not helping your country that you call your home.
Exactly. Destroying the country from within, which is essentially what slavery did too. The pro-slavery portion of the country, we're literally destroying America and its promise from within. So next up, trans woman shutters an immigrant business she basically shuts it down for refusing to get waxed. And we don't have a clip on this, thank goodness. But the story is that this particular individual went to a place where you get waxed, and it's a man who is dressed as a woman, so it's a transvestite, I guess, or trans woman.
Trans woman, but not fully transitioned.
Transgender.
Okay.
Yeah,
transvestite.
No. That's we're not
That's different.
Yeah, it's different.
And in the Daily Caller, it says, Jessica Yaniv, this is a transgender Canadian woman, so this happened in Canada, has filed over a dozen gender identity discrimination complaints against women in the Vancouver area who have refused to perform the Brazilian bikini wax procedures on her male genitalia.
So a form of ambo chaser.
What? What does
ambulance
that mean?
chaser. You're trying to file lawsuits and stuff.
Oh,
and
okay.
You're always
Sounds
trying to
like
get.
that.
You're trying to get like, oh, I won the suit because
I thought that was a different kind of wax when you said it.
Good Lord, I have no clue what that would have been.
I needed explanation too, Mark. I was
Sorry.
on that one.
That was
Sorry, I took that from the
squirrel
show
moment
Shameless.
as well. It's two.
Squirrel. Hey, I'm on the board.
But this is a true story, and the reason why we're talking about this, other than the fact that it is really funny, is how incredibly absurd is it to shut down a person's business? Keep in mind, the person who ran this business, who owns it, is an immigrant themselves in Canada, a legal immigrant and legal. And this individual, Yaniv, who basically is a transgender male turned female, of course I was a hard time explaining these things, goes there and basically requests an unusual wax, which this person is not qualified to provide, and then says, well, if you're not going to provide it, you're discriminating against me.
So yeah, I just think this is this story would have been nothing if it was a fully transitioned trans woman with everything. You know, if you're going to be a woman, you're a woman with all the surgeries and everything done. Then it would have been a non-issue. But actually, I figured out the story when listening to my hard rock channel on Sirius XM radio. They use more colorful language on it on Octane. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And we're going to cover it today. I'm like, you know, if you still have all your bits and pieces, basically, a male waxer should be doing it.
You're a man anyway. Come on.
Yeah,
you're genetically a man.
Yeah, I mean, like this should be a non-issue, but like, I mean,
if you do the full surgery, it doesn't.
You're still biologically a man.
The people that are running this business are literally were almost looking out for her by saying, like, we're not. This is a different process. Like, we're not trained to do this. We could injure you.
That's a good way of putting it.
I mean, they were. I mean, I think it said they brought up religious beliefs as well for some of them. But but like this transgender woman was going. It sounds like she has an agenda, right? She's done this everywhere. It's like that's probably what is agenda driven. She was going to do this, and maybe she knew she was going to do this, but they were looking out for her. This should be it just frustrates me when you're like,
going back to Don't Tread on Me though. It's incredibly invasive that the government can force you. Like, it's a Brazilian bikini wax that they're doing. That's something that's like very private and personal.
It sure is.
And to use the government to like force somebody else to do that to you, that's a terrifying thought that the government can come in and say, you have to do that.
Especially since it's not exactly what you do. Yeah, and it's not, and they're saying this, and I think Victor David Hansen in our last discussion, he's the gentleman who's part of Hoover Institution, and he wrote that great article. This is another part of the whole separating people by gender, by class, by sexual preference, and all these things, which creating a civil war environment. Well, it's absurd.
And you bring up a good point there, Mark. It's almost like where the whole idea that theory intersectionality is saying that if I'm a minority and I'm a transgender, my plight is more important than if you're just being simply a minority because you may be a minority that is straight, or and it's like you're putting everyone on a different pedestal, saying I have more of a right to be angry and upset because of X, Y, and Z, and you're not subscribing to anything. We're fracturing.
So let me ask you guys.
Values
let
anymore.
me ask you guys this: she has a Twitter, and the Twitter account.
Oh Lord, I don't want to watch that.
Jessica Yaniv has a Twitter account, and it says, "I'm one proud lesbian. I'll never give up fighting for human rights and equality." I'm really confused. Okay, I'm just saying, it's a baby boomer. How can this guy be a lesbian? We have to talk about this stuff.
So this trans woman views
it's a man dressed as a woman, and the man says he's a lesbian.
Well, to be honest here, if you're viewing yourself as a woman, you're a trans woman. It's just that you're not fully transitioned with all the surgeries yet, which I think that gets where the whole issue from this story gets from. But it's. If you're a trans woman and you still like women, then you are a lesbian. That's how it gets. Yeah, but
technically, yes.
Yeah,
I apologize to all of our listeners in advance.
Maybe to the baby boomers. Us millennials, we got this. We understand this.
Baby boomers, I'm
Mark's
clueless.
struggling.
Okay, I'm really struggling because I'm looking at the Twitter and going, I'm sorry, that's a man. It's not a lesbian.
We understand.
We get where you're coming from, but this is Adam.
We understand it. We might not agree with all of the points, but we understand where the people who identify themselves as transgender, we understand where they're coming from on that. Personally, we don't always agree with all their points, but we at least understand what angle it is they're coming at it from.
That again was Adam Couture, our producer. So next up, we have the dumbest bill in America, and it's really dumb. Adam has music. Okay. The dumbest bill in America. And believe me, it doesn't get dumber and weirder than this. So, folks, once again, in the city of Berkeley, California, they have a manhole ban, is what they're calling it. Essentially, it's the city of Berkeley, California, rewriting their local ordinances and code so that there isn't any gender discrimination. Non-binary language, I believe you can't have that.
He, she.
Yes, none of that stuff. And Councilman Rigel Robinson sponsored the bill. He's a city councilman. However, there was an individual testifying on behalf of the bill, and her name is State Senator Hannah Beth Jackson. So she was conveniently in the city of Berkeley testifying on behalf of this, I think, crazy bill. And here's a clip of her.
So that we are using what my grammar teacher would have had a heart attack over. We are using the phrase they. My grammar teacher's long gone, and I won't be hearing from her. And if any of you... From them, exactly. From them.
So I'm not sure if you heard that correctly, but basically you are supposed to use the term they, their, they, or their, yeah. So the three.
Anything else. Yeah.
Anything. You can't say he or she.
Or her,
so I just read, there's a part of this ordinance, I'm going to read it to you guys, and believe me, I want the millennial opinion on this because I'm so lost. But this is directly from the ordinance, and it says, pronoun singularity, they, them, shall indicate a singular individual unless the context indicates the contrary. Wait a minute. So you're using the plural they, them, even if it's one person that you're referring to. But if there are three people, it's still they, them. This is what the code, this is like crazy. Ugh. Millennials, help me.
It's a little far-fetched. It's a little crazy. But
it's going to pass.
Well, it's California. So what did you expect?
It's Berkeley.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Berkeley.
There's California, and then there's Berkeley.
Yeah.
Fun
stuff.
Millennials are more understanding. Obviously, you can tell from the last subject matter, but we understand some of these things. I mean, I don't have a problem if someone wants to be called a certain name. Like if I'm not Samantha, I'm Sam. Whatever, I'll call you Sam if you want. But this is a city
I won't dead name you.
Mandating in advance that you can't use terms, right?
You said mandating.
That's has to be their dating.
This is the city
validating,
decreeing that you cannot use these gendered terms in advance. It's not even like it's not even saying like, hey, you can call Andrew a him. Like it's saying you can't do that even before asking
I have
me
to call you
if I'm
they.
okay with it.
Hey, they, what's up?
That's right, exactly.
This is mandated speech.
And this is if you work for the city.
Speech.
So this would apply to all employees of the city of Berkeley, okay? It applies to all city employees. Obviously, if you live in the town, I'm not sure how that could be enforced, but if you work for the town, they're going to enforce it somehow. Pregnant woman becomes pregnant employee of the city of Berkeley. You can't say it's a pregnant. So because what? There are men who are pregnant? I don't think so.
Some of these are good. Manpower becomes human effort.
Well, there's man in it though now and human, so we're getting issues there.
Oh, that there is, yeah.
I mean, manhole, really. I mean, because a manhole,
manhole. I just went right in the gutter
If
with
you
that.
have an employee at the city of Berkeley and the employee is a woman and she works and they have to fix pipes underground and so forth, and you don't want to call it a manhole, you can be respectful and call it a woman hole too. I mean, no, come on. I'm not being.
I know.
This is because what's the
sewer cover?
Because look, it's like congressman and congresswoman. We can apply this across the English language and be fair. I'm just talking about from a boomer's perspective.
Yeah.
But, it's like these guys are actually making it worse because I think you're going to say the wrong word all the time.
You're
what is the right word?
Speech because now you can't use all these words in the English dictionary and vocabulary. And he's like, okay, what can I not use? Oh, see, there we go.
Fuji, what other words do they have? What other? I mean, because you got the list.
Here, instead of you can't use sister or brother. You got these are siblings. Which sure, whatever. I didn't know the sorority. I mean, some of these words I didn't know had. Where was the one? There was one master. I didn't realize that had a gender to it. Master. They say you can now you can use captain, skipper, Pilot?
Aye,
what?
Captain.
I didn't realize master had a gender connotation to that.
Interesting.
I didn't know either. How about, did you say sportsmen already? They want to change that to hunters.
That doesn't make any sense.
So sportsmen to hunters. Now, of
Sportsman's
course,
broad.
Right, because a sportsman could be someone who's a clay shooter,
Fisherman.
but they don't actually hunt animals. No. And a hunter clearly is someone who hunts and kills animals.
Yes.
So there's a difference. So, obviously, now I'm sure in Berkeley, no one owns a gun, so that's probably why they don't understand this, but there's that.
It's just
it's dangerous.
It's just like 1984, Ingsoc. That's George Orwell warned us. You gotta rewrite the language so that people don't think the wrong thoughts, and that sounds a lot like what's going on here.
Conditioning.
It's exactly right. It's basically so scary. I mean, this is a speech code. And so what happens, there are no penalties that I can find because I've read the ordinance, no penalties, but that usually happens later. So what kind of penalties
that would
could
be
they...
a freedom of speech lawsuit I would like to see.
I mean, can you imagine?
Well, yeah, when they're looking for a way to create new revenue, it's like, what do we have on the books that doesn't have a fine yet? Got
it. Instead of a swear jar, it'll be a gendered pronoun jar. Just put $1 in.
We're raking in the revenue.
This has to be one of the dumbest bills in America I have ever seen. It's only going to cause lawsuits. It's going to cause confusion. It's going to cause people to lose their jobs for no reason whatsoever by using nothing more than the English language that we all understand. So that's just my final thoughts on this. Millennials, come on. This is you guys are creating this.
I am not surprised because it's from Berkeley and I'm going to get a headache right now from this.
Next up, we have tick weaponization. Tick weaponization. Dun, dun, dun. So, believe it or not, there is a National Defense Authorization Act, which is the defense spending bill that is reauthorized every term in Congress, in the United States Congress. And this year is no different, except that there's an unusual amendment that was offered by New Jersey Republican Representative Chris Smith to order the Pentagon Inspector General to conduct a review about whether the military experimented with making ticks into biological weapons. This is a real thing. So this is like a tech thing, which is just bizarre.
I actually heard about this before. It's very interesting. Apparently, I think the disease they're focusing on would be like Lyme disease. Apparently it was being developed, research. This is, granted, don't double check the facts here, but that's what I've heard secondhand. It's like it was developed in a facility somewhere in the United States and then got out, and deer ticks were the carriers for it. And before you know it, Lyme disease is a very hard disease you have to live with, and you have to maintain it right. And then now you have the Lone Star tick. If you ever got that'll make you allergic to red meat.
So, Congressman Chris Smith, I guess I should call him there.
No, Congressperson. Or at least representative.
Okay. Well, he's over there.
Those people.
They.
He wants the following questions answered, which he put in his amendment. What were the parameters of the program? Who ordered it? Was there ever an accidental release anywhere in the United States or elsewhere? Were any ticks released by design? Yikes. Did the program contribute to the disease burden? Could any of this information help current day researchers find a way to mitigate the diseases?
So if this program existed, I bet it was a Cold War era program because we were trying all sorts of crazy stuff back then.
It does make you wonder, though, because there was a very large spike in Lyme disease, especially on the East Coast. I don't know if it's what the case is elsewhere, but I'm very familiar with the East Coast. Mm-hmm. And it sort of makes you wonder because Fort Detrick in Maryland is one of the places that they have been testing this, allegedly. But Chris Smith wants to get to the bottom of it. Yeah. So, and they were also testing it in New York, by the way. So maybe they should test it in Berkeley, just saying.
There will be protests.
Well, thank you for joining. That's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining us. This is Mark Fisher. I want to thank Andrew, the Fuji Fulciniti, Ryan the Squirrel Brady, and our producer, Adam Coutura. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook. See you next time.